Good day and welcome back to Horsemanship 101 again. I want to talk today a little bit about why I don't do training videos, because one of the comments on one of my recent videos was, it's a good video and everything else, but I understand why you don't do training videos, but it sure would be nice if you did. Well, someday I might get a little more into that, but in the meantime, most of my videos are going to be practical, theoretical principles, a mindset, a mentality. And if you get all that stuff working, which you have to have first, then you can get into the training part, which, I've said it before, methods and techniques are not near as important as the mentality. And methods and techniques, one of the reasons I don't like doing training videos is because I don't want anybody to think that my way is the right way or the only way, because it might not work for you. It works for me quite well, but it might not work for you. And I've said before, there's more than one right way to do things. So that's one of the reasons I really don't want to do training videos. There's enough people doing them and saying you got to do it exactly the way I do it. And I don't think that's true. I think that there are a lot of variables that have to be explored. And I think if you get the right mentality and use some basic principles, you can probably come up with a lot of stuff yourself as to how to do things, because that's kind of what I've done. Is most of what I do is I've watched a lot of other people how they do things, and I've kind of took bits and pieces from each one and put them together to create things that work for me. And I don't like to do the training videos so much because, like I said, I don't want you thinking that my way is the only way or the right way, because there's more than one right way to do things, my way works for me, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But if you grasp the basic principles and mentality behind the things that I talk about, I think the rest of it's going to kind of fall into place, because there's a lot of common sense stuff that, common sense if you get your head in the right place, maybe not to everybody, but for example, I'll go back to the car analogy again. If you're building a car, and a custom car of some kind, before you worry about whether or not the accelerator is working great, the first thing you're going to do is make sure your brakes and steering work well, because otherwise you're just going to get yourself killed. So you want to make sure, there is a common sense, logical order to doing things, and the same is true of training horses. There's an order to doing things. Before you ever even think about putting a saddle on, you want to make sure that you got good brakes and steering, and the gates, that comes afterwards. I had somebody questioning me one time when I was working with the horse, and they go, "Oh, what are your cues for the gates?" And I said, "What gates? We're still working on getting this horse to stop running around like a lunatic," which at that point we had. I was still working on brakes and steering, and they were worried about the gears. And that's my point, is if you use a common sense, logical approach to things, you'll figure out how to put it together in an order that works, because there is an order to things that makes sense, that you should do things in. And I don't even have a list. I don't even know. I would really have a hard time even making a list. I've had people many times ask me, "Well, what's the order to do things?" And it's like, I don't know. I just do it. Okay, that is another one of the many reasons I would have a hard time doing training videos, is because sometimes I actually have a hard time explaining what I do. That doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing. It just means I have a hard time putting it into words for other people, because often it's like, some of the great horsemen have said, it's a feel thing. It's something in your gut. You just know when you're doing the right thing. And if you're paying attention to the horse, it'll tell you whether you're getting it right or wrong too. And that's another one of the things you have to learn, is you have to learn to be observant to the horse before you even start doing anything. There's a lot of skills that you have to acquire before you ever start doing a step-by-step training. And, one of many is learning to read the horse, so that you know when you're going too fast or pushing it too hard. Because I've said many times before, you can never go too slow, but you sure the heck can go too fast. And going too fast can really mess up a horse, can cause you problems of all sorts and kinds. Just take your time, observe the horse, watch how it responds to things that you do. And, the methods and techniques, you can watch lots of guys, but, if they ever say, my way is the way or the only way, disregard that immediately. But don't necessarily disregard what they're doing, because I've seen a lot of guys that I personally, I don't much care for them as people, and their egos and pride and the fact they put money ahead of horses, in my opinion. But they've definitely got some good methods and techniques and principles that they do teach. So I'm not going to get into training videos, well, at least not right now. In time, I might do a few. I'd need a completely different arrangement with camera, etc., in order to do decent ones. And there are lots of other good ones out there to watch. But I do think that what I am doing is kind of filling in the gaps with the mentality behind the training thing that a lot of people miss out on, that nobody ever talks about in their training programs or anything. And I think it's a critical part that you will find. Many of the very good horsemen in history, both past and present, apply, even if they don't talk about it much. They apply these principles and mentalities, to their training programs. Even if they don't talk about them, and there have been guys in the past that did talk about them, and you could take these principles and philosophies that they talk about and apply them to just about anything in life, which some people find very confusing, because there's one guy, I'm not going to mention his name right now, but he actually wrote a couple books that I think are great, but they're definitely not step-by-step how-to training books. They're much more philosophical and ideological, and you could probably apply them to just about anything in life, not just horses. But he was also touted as being one of the greatest horsemen of all time. Now, I'm sure there's other guys that are probably better, but we just never heard of them. But there's no doubt that he was good. But he emphasized a mentality. He emphasized philosophies and ideological things that aren't part of training programs. And in the future, I probably will get into doing a little bit of some training videos. Apparently the one I did recently on how to pat a horse was incredibly popular. It got lots of views compared to some of the other ones that I thought were just as important. But so I may eventually get into doing some training videos that will help people out a bit. But in the meantime, I think if you read between the lines and pay attention to what I'm saying in all the videos, there's some really important stuff there, and a lot of them as to the mentality that you need to have and the principles behind the approach that you need to have in order to be able to train before you learn the methods and techniques that allow you to do the training, okay? So get your head in the right place, and the rest will all come easy. And sometime in the future, I might do some training videos for you. So hang in there. But in the meantime, keep watching, because I think these are important. I think what I'm talking about is important. Otherwise, I wouldn't be wasting my time doing it. Have a good day, folks.